Imagine this. You say nothing, and in that quiet, you win. Picture the moment, a loaded remark tossed across a table, a look that questions your choices. Your body tenses, your mind races, scrambling for the perfect rebuttal, the flawless excuse. That urge to explain feels like self-preservation. But what if it's the exact opposite? The ancient Stoics uncovered a radical truth. You are not the curator of other people's perceptions. Your integrity is not a public document needing footnotes. Your only duty is to your inner compass. Do not petition to be understood. Be solid, be unmoved. Let the chaos swirl and exhaust itself against your stillness. If you feel drawn to that kind of unshakable calm, to a life no longer spent on defense, you're in the right place. It begins with something tiny, a sigh, a raised eyebrow, a question wrapped in velvet that still finds a nerve, and an ancient program boots up inside you. Your mouth opens, you justify, you provide receipts for your character, pleading your case to a judge you never appointed. Where did they get the gavel? This isn't weakness. It's the deep human longing to be seen correctly, to align the you in their head with the you in your heart. But the instant you start pleading your defense, you've ceded the battlefield. You've silently agreed that their verdict holds weight. That's the invisible cage, not built with steel, but with your own words. We perform, believing that if we articulate well enough, we can control the reflection in their eyes. But it's not a mirror, it's a prism, bending your light through the lens of their own history, their biases, their unresolved wounds. And yet we contort ourselves, trying to adjust a picture that was never ours to fix. Epictetus put it bluntly. He said, if someone slanders you, don't argue with their lies. Instead, simply note, they are clearly unaware of my other greater flaws. That isn't wit, it's liberation. It's stepping off the stage they built for you. There's a profound freedom in realizing you have no contract to be comprehended, that your value remains intact when someone misreads you, that your dignity isn't threatened by disagreement. But to live here, you must break a lifelong habit. You learned this script young. Explanation was the currency of safety, to avoid punishment, to regain favor, to secure love. You carried that transaction into adulthood, not seeing that the same tactic now drains your power. You are not a child petitioning for permission to exist. You already have that right. And often, those demanding an explanation aren't seeking truth. They're seeking a lever. Your defense becomes the handle. So, next time, when your pulse quickens at a judgment, when your tongue prepares its eloquent counterattack, pause. Ask one brutal question. What if I don't? What if I let that accusation hang in the empty air, unfed by my energy? It will often wither there. People are accustomed to steering others through predictable reactions. But when you offer none, you become a wall of calm. You don't swing, so you cannot be knocked off balance. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The disturbance comes not from the thing, but from your judgment of it. You are the gatekeeper. The power you feel slipping away wasn't stolen. You handed it over, and once you see that, you can't unsee it. You'll notice how often you explain to be liked, to be forgiven, to avoid a moment's awkwardness. You'll catch yourself justifying a simple choice to a stranger. You see how frequently you trade your peace for temporary approval. But something monumental shifts when you stop. When you let your actions be your biography, you cultivate an internal mass, something dense and anchored that isn't tossed by every breeze of opinion. Carl Jung identified the great task. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, not an edited version for public consumption, the real one. And who you truly are doesn't require a narrated tour for every critic. So let them misunderstand. Let them craft their narratives. Your task isn't to manage their perception. It's to live in alignment with your own truth. This isn't coldness, it's sovereignty. Respond when it serves purpose, not when it pacifies your ego. Seneca taught that a happy life requires the pursuit of wisdom, and wisdom doesn't shout. It doesn't debate, it stands. Quiet, constant, entirely self-possessed. When you release the need to explain, you access a different kind of strength. Not loud, flashy power, silent, rooted power. You become unreachable, not because you've built higher walls, but because you stopped attending battles that were never yours. You're no longer the defendant. You've left their courtroom entirely. You understand that being misread is a minor toll on the road to freedom. This reflex was carved into you. Back then, defense was survival. A child's world is fragile. Misunderstanding could mean loss. So you learned the phrases, "It wasn't me. I didn't mean it. Please believe me." With each one, you were fighting for your place in the tribe. But that survival mechanism has outlived its purpose. You've grown, but the reflex remains, stuck in childhood. The profound tragedy, most never realize that the very thing they think protects them is what cages them. So when questioned now, you feel the old panic. The trial begins. But here is the liberating secret. There is no courtroom. There is no legitimate judge. There is only another person viewing you through the distorted glass of their own experience. And when you rush to defend, you are granting supreme authority to their distorted view. You are saying their version of you is more real than your own. Nothing drains a soul faster than seeking validation. In a hall of mirrors, you become an echo of the loudest voice. And that is no way to exist. The deeper danger is that defense becomes your identity. You start believing your purpose is to prove your goodness, your worth. But that's not integrity, that's a performance. True character, like a mountain, doesn't plead its case. It simply is. When your self-regard depends on external approval, it is brittle, easily cracked by criticism, easily bent by guilt. You overgive to reclaim favor. You agree to silence dissent. You explain endlessly to those who aren't listening. And each time, you confirm a terrible equation. Their approval is worth more than your peace. To break this, you don't need to grow a colder heart. You need clearer vision. You must recognize that most accusations aren't about truth. They're about control. Someone is unsettled by your boundary, your growth, your quiet confidence. Instead of facing their own discomfort, they outsource it to you. And you, trained by a lifetime, rush to manage their emotional state. But what if you didn't? What if you let them sit with the unease they created? That is how you reclaim your strength, by refusing to carry emotions that belong to them. Seneca said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." By trying to preempt every misjudgment, you suffer twice, in the fear and in the frantic reaction. The cruel irony, the more you strive to be understood, the more suspect you become. Your over-explanation reads as insecurity. It makes people wonder why you're trying so hard. The shame you feel isn't a mark of failure, it's a signal. It's pointing to where you gave your power away. Carl Jung called shame a soul-eating emotion. You starve it not by explaining more, but by ceasing to feed it. By stopping the chorus of, "Please see me," and starting the quiet mantra, "I see myself." And that is enough. The world will not always get you. That is not a problem to be solved. It is a condition of life to be accepted. Understanding is not a debt the world owes you, and you do not require it to stand tall. When you cease living for approval, you begin living from alignment. And from that place, everything transforms. Your energy consolidates, your relationships purify. Your sense of self becomes fortress-like. Socrates advised, to find yourself, think for yourself. So think for yourself, speak for yourself, but never beg for an audience. You are not here to be easily digested by every person you meet. You are here to live with fullness and honesty. That will always confuse some. And that is perfectly fine, because when you are no longer trained to submit, you are finally built to stand. Your silence, chosen and deliberate, becomes your most profound reply. There is a quiet hunger in almost everyone to be known, not superficially, but deeply, to be grasped without performance. We carry this hope into conversations, believing that with the right words, the perfect tone, someone will finally say, "I see you." But that moment is rare. Most people aren't listening to understand. They're listening to compare, to confirm, or to conquer. Every time you defend, you place that precious hope into hands unequipped to hold it. You don't explain because you love conflict. You do it because you crave peace. Yet the endless campaign to be understood is what robs you of peace. You speak not from necessity, but from the fear of invisibility. You open your heart again and again, hoping this time they won't mistake it for something else. But those determined to misunderstand will always find a way, and each correction you offer only validates that their opinion is the ruling one. The moment you accept that frame, you've lost your footing. There is a quiet might in those who have ceased to explain, not from bitterness, but from depth. They've found something beyond approval, alignment. And alignment doesn't seek a spotlight. It glows regardless, like a star, visible whether anyone looks up or not. The more you speak just to be seen, the more authority you relinquish. You're handing the keys to your inner state to people who haven't earned stewardship. And even with noble intent, you slowly drift from your core. You become an actor playing honesty rather than a person living it. There is a strange authority in letting them be wrong, not from pride, but from settled certainty. A confidence that whispers, "If you don't perceive me, that's all right. I perceive me." That isn't surrender, it's selecting peace. You realize no defense, no proof, can ever grant the security that comes from being rooted in your own truth. The more you lean into this, the lighter you feel. You quit trying to be the hero in someone else's story. You release control over how they write your chapter. Let them tell whatever tale they need. It doesn't redefine you. Marcus Aurelius observed that the opinion of 10,000 people is worthless if none know the subject. Who is the ultimate expert on you? You. Who witnesses your heart, your struggles, your growth more intimately? No one. That's the foundation, not applause, not consensus, just your own unwavering presence. When that becomes enough, everything changes. The noise recedes, the static fades, and you realize you never needed a publicist for your soul. You only needed to remember yourself. An accusation stings not always because it's true, but because it threatens a carefully maintained self-portrait. In that second, when someone labels you selfish or uncaring, the wave rises. The pressure to clarify, to correct the record, to show them the real you. But what if you let the wave crash without you? What if you stood unmoving in the quiet afterward? That kind of silence is disarming. When you don't react, their script falls apart. They expected a fight, a tear, a concession, something to fuel their narrative. Your stillness becomes a mirror, reflecting back their own intensity, their assumptions. Suddenly, they're alone with their gesture. We're taught that silence is admission, but silence is only weak when it comes from fear. When it flows from certainty, it becomes presence. It has weight. It changes the atmosphere without uttering a syllable. This isn't passive, it's potent restraint. It's deciding your serenity is more valuable than their verdict. There is power in being uninterpretable, in not broadcasting your inner world for public analysis. You owe no one your emotional energy just because they've decided to be loud. You don't have to mirror their chaos, and when you refuse, everything is revealed. They may call you arrogant for not seeking their endorsement, cold for not melting under heat, selfish for prioritizing your clarity over their comfort. Their labels are biographies of themselves, written in small, petty fonts. And in your calm, that becomes unmistakable. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the best revenge is to be unlike your enemy. Don't forfeit your self-command in a bid to make someone grasp your character. Don't step into their noise. When you remain centered, you demonstrate a profound truth. Not every fire needs to be fought with more fire. Sometimes the most potent action is non-action. Stillness isn't emotionless. It's the choice not to be governed by emotion. You can feel the sting and still choose quiet. You can hold your truth without brandishing it. You choose not to defend because you already know. And if that knowing is deep enough, what another says simply passes through like weather. It may rustle the leaves, but it never moves the roots. That is authentic strength, not domination, but unshakable self-respect. The kind that doesn't yell, the kind that understands not every critic warrants a response. You become the eye of the storm, calm, steady, unmoved while everything spins. This stillness practiced becomes a silent reputation. People sense you aren't easily thrown, that you engage only when it matters, that your quiet isn't empty, it's full of awareness. You're not ignoring them, you're observing. And in that pause, they are confronted with themselves. They must wonder why they needed you to react. Carl Jung noted that what irritates us in others can lead us to self-understanding. By remaining still, you offer others that chance, not by forcing it, but by refusing to participate in their play. Most won't take it, but you remain unchanged, and that is enough. Aristotle saw self-knowledge as the root of wisdom. Constant defense blocks that path. It keeps you in performance mode. Stillness gives you space. Space to reflect, to align, to choose. You cease reacting. You begin responding. And sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. You realize you don't need to prove your worth in the middle of someone else's storm. You don't need to shout over their noise. You don't need to offer your peace as a bargaining chip. You sit in silence to protect your sovereignty. And in that quiet, you remember, you are not here to be controlled by chaos. You are here to embody something that cannot be shaken. This is the path of the Stoic mindset. It's not about suppressing emotion, but about mastering your response. If this resonated with you, show the algorithm this is the kind of content you value. Hit the like button. And for more guides on building an unshakable inner life, subscribe to Stoic Mindset Mastery. Truth and identity are not the same coin. If someone says, "You failed," and they're right, there is strength in a simple, "Yes, I did." That ownership doesn't diminish you, it expands you. It shows you aren't afraid of reality. But the moment they morph that truth into an identity, you are a failure. You owe them nothing. That's no longer about the act. That's about control. That's about shaping. Your self-view. Accept that frame, argue within it, and you've lost your center, your stillness. When you see this clearly, your replies change. You stop battling phantoms. You pause. You breathe. Instead of reacting, you reflect. That's an interesting perspective. I see you feel strongly about that. These aren't weak. They are fortified boundaries in polite clothing. You're saying, "I won't carry that for you." You let the weight remain with the person who threw it. You remember that not every criticism is yours to process. Carl Jung said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." You are not what they name you. You are the still point in the turning world, the one who chooses how much of the world's noise becomes part of your story. If you absorb every harsh word, every projection, you'll live in constant reaction, forever editing a version of you that lives only in someone else's mind. But if you reflect instead of react, you stay rooted. You don't become their character. This isn't about evading responsibility. Stoicism is detachment from distortion, not from truth. When you err, own it, fully, quietly. I was wrong. That is complete. No decoration, no character defense. Your character isn't defined by a single moment, but by how you carry that moment forward. But when someone tries to stretch your mistake into your entire identity, that's where your line is drawn, not in fury, but in quiet, unbreakable clarity. Seneca reminded us that poverty is the person who craves more, not the one who has little. This applies to validation. If you crave approval so intensely that you react to every critique, you are poor in peace. True wealth is the capacity to observe without needing to control, to hear something cruel and not let it into your bloodstream, to know your worth so thoroughly that even when someone questions it, you do not. That strength is earned slowly by choosing reflection over reaction again and again. Sometimes the heat will rise. The old program will scream to correct, to protest. But if you can pause in that space, if you can let the silence stretch long enough to see the situation clearly, you'll notice something vital. You'll see that most attacks have nothing to do with you. They are about the attacker, their fear, their need for control, their unhealed wounds. If you react, you become a character in their drama. If you reflect, you reveal the entire play. Your calm becomes the contrast that makes their chaos obvious. In that stillness, you reclaim your power, not by force, but by refusal. In the end, reacting is instinct. It's easy. Reflecting is discipline. It is strength. It is the quiet art of staying centered while the world tries to pull you apart. It is knowing your value was never something others were authorized to appraise. You were never on trial, not unless you willingly entered their courtroom. So stop walking into rooms where your worth is debated. Walk away, hold your truth close, let them speak, let them speculate, but don't let them move you. That is the mark of the unshakable. People will still comment. You've changed. You're too intense. You're not who I thought. Good. The moment you no longer need to be easily swallowed is the moment you stop being a prisoner to taste. You don't flinch at misunderstanding because you've released the fantasy of universal clarity. You don't explain when criticized because your self-worth isn't in their custody. You don't shrink under judgment because judgment loses its force when you've already made peace with your own reflection. This is where true invulnerability begins. Not in perfection, but in full ownership. You own your mess, your contradictions. You stop performing nobility and live with integrity. Carl Jung said the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. That's why so few do. Full acceptance means dropping the act. It means standing in your truth even when it makes others uneasy. But once you do, you become immune to manipulation. Shame has no grip. Guilt trips fail. You are inoculated against social games designed to make you doubt your value. A profound calm arises from this place. Not indifference, but deep stillness. You don't lash out because there's nothing left to defend. You don't chase approval because your direction is internal. You don't waste energy managing perceptions because you know perception reveals the viewer, not the subject. You realize you've been giving your power away each time you tried to fix how someone saw you. Now you take it back, not with a scream, but with silence, with stillness, with self-possession. You were never meant to be a brand, a curated exhibit of likable traits. You are a complex, layered human. The moment you embrace all of it, light and shadow, you cease being a puppet to approval. You stop dancing. You become solid, whole. Seneca wrote, "We cannot have everything we want, but we can choose not to want what we lack and to use well what we have. That includes your nature, your history, your scars. Stop wishing you were different. Stop wishing people saw you differently. Stop running from the parts that don't fit the popular script. Show up. Fully. without apology. It's not about becoming cold or building walls. It's about releasing the fear that keeps you explaining, defending, apologizing for your existence. When that fear dissolves, your posture shifts. You walk differently, you speak differently. You carry a presence that is felt, not announced. It's not arrogance, it's alignment. It's the quiet gravity of someone who has quit performing. That energy is magnetic, not because you seek to impress, but because people are starved for the real. And in your alignment, you remind them of what they've buried in themselves. Plato called the first and greatest victory the conquest of self. When you are no longer ruled by the need to be liked, you win that war. You stop being prey, not by becoming a predator, but by becoming unavailable for the games predators play. You see manipulation. You don't bite at bait. You don't explain when cornered. You hold your ground, steady, calm, untouched. This doesn't mean people stop testing you. They may test more. They'll push, prod, trying to crack your stillness. The difference is, it won't work. Your identity isn't on trial anymore. You're not here to win arguments or convince anyone of your goodness. You're here to live fully, and that means releasing the need to be explained. Eventually, they learn. They learn your silence isn't weakness. Your refusal to defend isn't guilt. It's clarity, it's self-respect. It's the decision to stop trading your peace for a seat at their table. Marcus Aurelius said the soul is dyed by the color of its thoughts. When your thoughts are rooted in truth, not in approval, your soul takes on a hue that cannot be faded by outside judgment. Becoming untouched isn't about rising above others. It's about sinking so deeply into who you are that no one else can move you. You stop being a shadow of expectation. You become the substance, quiet, powerful, free. You are not here to be understood by everyone. You are here to understand yourself so completely that misunderstanding no longer shakes you. Hold your ground, speak less, stand more, and let your presence accomplish what words never could.